March 2nd, 1978. Two men dressed in black entered a Swiss cemetery carrying flashlights and shovels, and before dawn, they had stolen a coffin and buried it in a cornfield 12 miles away. The widow refused to pay the ransom. The same man had been exiled from America for 20 years, married two 16-year-old girls when he was in his 30s, and lost a paternity case despite blood tests proving he wasn't the father. Controversy followed him, and some called it injustice. But the truth was something else entirely. Charlie Chaplin became cinema's most beloved icon, and the FBI file on him was real. The blood tests were conclusive, and the coffin theft actually happened. But before the coffin and the cornfield, before the FBI file, a 5-year-old boy stood on a stage as his mother's voice cracked and failed. Today, we will hear his story. Number 1. A 5-year-old boy finishes his mother's performance as she collapses. January 1894, at a military music hall called the Canteen in Aldershot, Hampshire. Hannah Chaplin's voice cracked and failed mid-performance before a rough audience of soldiers, and they began jeering, making catcalls, singing falsetto mockingly. The theater manager had seen little Charlie perform informally and led the 5-year-old boy onto the stage. Chaplin recalled in his autobiography how the audience began to laugh and sing falsetto and make catcalls when his mother's voice went into a whisper. The manager led him by the hand and, after a few explanatory words to the audience, left him on the stage alone. Before a glare of footlights and faces and smoke, the child started to sing Jack Jones and E. Dunno Where E Are, then impressions, including one of his mother's cracking voice, and when coins rained down, he stopped to collect them and announced he would continue, which got laughs. His mother eventually came on stage to carry him off to thunderous applause, and this was his first stage appearance, while hers was the last. Hannah Chaplin never performed professionally again and was institutionalized at Cane Hill Asylum just 4 years later, suffering from what modern researchers believe was syphilis-induced psychosis. Charlie and his brother Sidney were sent to the workhouse twice before age 9, wearing uniforms with heads shaved, separated from their mother, while their father, an alcoholic music hall singer, died of cirrhosis at age 38, when Charlie was 12 and nearly received a pauper's funeral. That 5-year-old workhouse orphan would achieve something impossible 21 years later. Number 2. From workhouse orphan to highest paid entertainer in the world at age 26. The numbers document one of history's most spectacular rises from poverty, and the salary progression tells the story. In 1914, $175 per week at Keystone Studios for his first film contract. 1 year later, $1,250 per week at SNA, plus a $10,000 signing bonus. The following year, $10,000 per week at Mutual, plus a $150,000 signing bonus, which meant $670,000 per year. That $670,000 annual income in 1916 made the 26-year-old Chaplin one of the highest paid people in the world, earning 9 times the president's salary when the U.S. president earned $75,000 that year. A Mutual publicist wrote that next to the war in Europe, Chaplin had become the most expensive item in contemporary history. First National paid him $1 million for 8 films by 1918, the first $1 million entertainment contract, and court documents from his 1927 divorce reveal his estate had reached $16 million, equivalent to $215 to $280 million today. Biographer David Robinson called it the most dramatic of all the rags to riches stories ever told. The revolutionary move came on February 5, 1919, when Chaplin co-founded United Artists with Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and D.W. Griffith, marking the first time actors owned their own distribution company. Studio head Richard Rowland heard the news and reportedly quipped that the inmates were taking over the asylum. That fortune and that success would be shadowed by a pattern that began 4 years earlier. Number 3. The documented pattern. 2 16-year-old brides. Charlie Chaplin married 4 times, and his ages versus his brides' ages tell a disturbing story. Mildred Harris, his first wife, was 16 when they married in 1918, while he was 29, a 13-year age gap. Lita Grey became his second wife in 1924, at 16 years old when he was 35, a 19-year age gap. Paulette Goddard married him around 1936, when she was around 25 and he was 47, roughly a 22-year age gap. Una O'Neill became his fourth wife in 1943 at 18 years old when he was 54, a 36-year age gap. Mildred Harris told Chaplin she was pregnant on October the 23rd, 1918, triggering a rushed marriage to avoid scandal, and the pregnancy proved false. When she actually became pregnant later, their son, Norman Spencer Chaplin, lived only 3 days before they divorced in 1920. Lita Grey first appeared in Chaplin's films at age 12 as the flirting angel in The Kid in 1921, tested for the gold rush at 15, and that's when the 35-year-old Chaplin began a sexual relationship with the minor. She became pregnant while still 15, and under California law, Chaplin could have been imprisoned for statutory rape. They married secretly in Mexico to avoid prosecution, and reportedly, Chaplin told friends that getting married was better than going to prison. Una O'Neill was the 18-year-old daughter of Nobel Prize-winning playwright Eugene O'Neill, who was the same age as Chaplin, and her father immediately disowned his daughter and never spoke to her again for the rest of his life. The second marriage, to 16-year-old Lita Grey, would produce the most scandalous divorce in Hollywood history. Number 4. The 52-page divorce complaint that was sold as near pornography. Lita Grey's January 11th, 1927, divorce filing ran to 52 pages when typical divorce complaints were 3 to 4 pages, and the document leveled accusations that made headlines nationwide: seduction of a minor and statutory rape, perverted sexual desires described as abnormal, unnatural, perverted, degenerate, and indecent. Illegal sexual acts, since oral sex was criminal in 1920s California, demanding she have an illegal abortion when she became pregnant at 15 or 16, and infidelity with multiple women during the marriage. The complaint stated that the demands were so revolting, degrading, and offensive to the plaintiff, and were such infamous personal indignities that they shocked her refined sensibilities and repulsed her moral decency. The document was published and sold publicly as a 32-page booklet titled Complaint of the Young Movie Star Against Her Elderly Husband, carrying the warning to maidens as to what may be expected from union with a rich but much older man. $5 bought you a copy sold under the counter and considered near pornography. The settlement reached $825,000, $625,000 to Grey, and $200,000 in trust for their 2 sons, the largest divorce settlement in American history at that time. Filming on the circus stopped for 8 months while Chaplin suffered a nervous breakdown, and associates reported he contemplated suicide. When he returned to work, his black hair had turned almost completely white, and actor Henry Bergman recalled being shocked, profoundly shocked, saying if anybody ever wanted proof of what Charlei had been through, that was it. Grey later acknowledged that her 1966 memoir was largely a work of exaggeration and fabrication. Biographer Joyce Milton noted the relationship may have inspired Nabokov's Lolita, since Grey's birth name was Lilita, and the gold rush was set in Alaska, where Nabokov's Lolita eventually settles in a town called Graystar. 17 years later, another woman would make accusations that led to something even more shocking. Number 5. Blood tests proved he wasn't the father. The jury said, pay anyway, for 21 years. Actress Joan Barry claimed Chaplin fathered her child in June 1943, and blood tests were performed in February 1944 with results that were scientifically conclusive. Joan Barry had type A blood, baby Carol Ann had type B blood, and Charlie Chaplin had type O blood. Under ABO blood group heredity, a type O father cannot produce a type B child, and 3 doctors unanimously testified that the man, Charles Chaplin, cannot be the father of the child, Carol Ann Barry. Barry's own lawyer acknowledged that 3 distinguished medical men, preeminent in their fields, had decided that Mr. Chaplin was eliminated, and they must and do abide by their conclusions. Barry changed lawyers and reneged on her agreement to dismiss charges, and her new attorney, Joseph Scott, delivered a 3-hour closing argument, calling Chaplin a cheap cockney cad, lecherous hound, and gray-haired old buzzard. He thundered that wives and mothers all over the country were watching to see them stop him dead in his tracks, telling the jury they would sleep well the night they gave this baby a name. The first trial ended in mistrial, 7-5 for Chaplin, while the second trial produced a jury vote of 11-1 against Chaplin. Under California law at the time, blood tests were admissible but not conclusive, which meant juries could ignore them. Chaplin was ordered to pay child support until 1964, 21 years, for a child scientifically proven not to be his, and the injustice directly led to California's 1953 Uniform Act on blood tests, which made blood tests conclusive in paternity cases. The reform came 8 years too late for Chaplin. The FBI also charged him under the Mann Act for transporting women across state lines for immoral purposes, carrying up to 23 years in prison, and Chaplin was acquitted in April 1944. The FBI's interest in Charlie Chaplin had begun 22 years earlier. 6. J. Edgar Hoover's 1900-page vendetta that began in 1922. The FBI maintained a 1900-page file on Chaplin, file number 100-127090, now available through FOIA at FBI Vault, and surveillance began in 1922, when the Justice Department described him as an active part of the Red Movement in this country. The FBI tracked speeches where he addressed audiences as comrades, his 1942 statement that he was not a communist but felt pretty pro-communist, support for Russian war relief during World War II, associations with suspected leftists, and films deemed propaganda including Modern Times, The Great Dictator, and Monsieur Verdoux. What the FBI found tells a different story. Their own report concluded by 1949 that no witnesses were available to testify affirmatively that Chaplin had been a Communist Party member in the past, that he was currently a member, or that he had contributed funds to the Communist Party. The FBI had Communist Party membership rosters from informants, and Chaplin was not on them. Hoover was personally involved, demanding action and criticizing agents who failed to produce evidence. And by August 1948, he had a security index card classifying Chaplin as an alien communist, placing him on a list of individuals to be detained in an emergency. Much of the file came from unreliable sources, and one FBI memo acknowledged an informant gathered information from things she overheard from a patron at the beauty shop. When subpoenaed to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1947, Chaplin sent a telegram stating he was not a communist, but a peacemonger. His appearance was postponed 3 times, and he never testified, possibly because HUAC feared he would arrive dressed as the Tramp and make a mockery of proceedings. In September 1952, the government found a way to remove him from America permanently. Number 7. Re-entry permit revoked while crossing the Atlantic. Charlie Chaplin boarded the RMS Queen Elizabeth in New York on September 17, 1952, with wife Una and their 4 children, sailing to London for the premiere of Limelight. 2 days later, on September 19, 1952, while the ship was still at sea, Attorney General James P. McGranary revoked Chaplin's re-entry permit. Chaplin received the news via press release and cablegram one day out of New York, and McGranary's official statement cited grounds of morals, health, or insanity, and advocating communism, or associating with communist or pro-communist organizations. He called Chaplin an unsavory character, with a leering, sneering attitude toward a country whose hospitality has enriched him. Declassified documents reveal the decision was actually made on September 9th, before Chaplin departed, at a meeting between Hoover, INS officials, and McGranary, where they planned the mid-ocean ambush. Chaplin was told he would have to appear before a government board of inquiry to answer charges of a political nature, and of moral turpitude if he wished to return, and he never challenged the ban. In April 1953, he surrendered his re-entry permit at the U.S. consulate in Geneva and stated he wouldn't go back there if Jesus Christ were president. The family settled at Manoir de Bon, a 35-acre estate in Corsier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland, and Una returned briefly to Los Angeles in November 1952 to liquidate assets, reportedly sewing $1,000 bills into her mink coat to transport their fortune. She renounced her American citizenship in 1954, and Chaplin did not return to America for 20 years. When he finally returned, something unprecedented happened. Number 8. The longest-standing ovation in Oscar history, 12 minutes. The 44th Academy Awards on April 10, 1972, placed the honorary Oscar presentation, normally mid-show, at the very end of the ceremony for Charlie Chaplin. A 20-minute retrospective montage of his films played before he took the stage, and the 82-year-old Chaplin received what multiple sources confirm as a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in Academy Awards history. Jack Nicholson, Audrey Hepburn, and Jack Lemmon were on their feet, and the camera caught Jackie Coogan, the child star of The Kid in 1921, visibly tearful. Chaplin spoke briefly and told the crowd that this was an emotional moment for him, and words seemed so futile, so feeble, thanking them for the honor of inviting him and calling them wonderful, sweet people. He reportedly said at one point that he was being born again, and the award citation read that it was to Charles Chaplin for the incalculable effect he has had in making motion pictures the art form of this century. 4 days earlier, the Film Society of Lincoln Center had hosted a gala where Chaplin told the crowd he felt as if he were the object of a complete renaissance, as if he were being reborn, and the event established the Chaplin Award, now given annually to filmmaking legends. Finally, on March 4th, 1975, Queen Elizabeth II knighted him at Buckingham Palace. Declassified Foreign Office documents released in 2002 reveal the honor was blocked in 1956 due to fears of damaging US-UK relations and moral outrage at his marriages to two 16-year-olds, and officials even changed 16-year-old women to 16-year-old girls in documents. The 85-year-old Chaplin, too frail to kneel, received the honor in a wheelchair as the Welsh Guards played his limelight theme. The fourth marriage, the one that seemed most impossible, became his redemption. Number 9. The 36-year age gap marriage that lasted 34 years. Despite every reason to fail, Chaplin's fourth marriage became his redemption. Una O'Neill was 18 and Chaplin was 54, a 36-year age difference. And her father, playwright Eugene O'Neill, who was the exact same age as Chaplin, immediately disowned her and never spoke to her again. His third wife later said that Una broke Gene's heart, and he never mentioned her name after her marriage. The marriage began June 16th, 1943, and produced 8 children. Geraldine in 1944, Michael in 1946, Josephine in 1949, Victoria in 1951, all born in Beverly Hills, and Eugene in 1953, Jane in 1957, Annette in 1959, Christopher in 1962, all born in Switzerland. Chaplin was 73 years old when his youngest child was born, and he wrote that for the last 20 years he had known what happiness means, wishing he could write more about it because it involved love, and perfect love was the most beautiful of all frustrations because it was more than one could express. Friend Carol Mathau called it a great, great love affair, not only because of the intensity, but because of the lasting intensity. When Chaplin was exiled, Una renounced her American citizenship to stay with him, managed all his affairs, supported him through every controversy, and remained devoted until his death on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1977, at age 88 in their Swiss home. Just 68 days after his burial, something bizarre happened that could have been a scene from one of his own films. Number 10, his body was stolen from the grave and held for ransom in a cornfield. Just 68 days after Chaplin's burial, On the night of March 1st to 2nd, 1978, two men dressed in black entered the unguarded Coursier-sur-Vevey cemetery with flashlights and shovels. Working for approximately 2 hours in heavy rain, they unearthed Chaplin's 297-pound oak coffin, dragged it across the cemetery, loaded it into a station wagon, and drove to a cornfield near the village of Noville, where they reburied it. Roman Wardas, a 24-year-old unemployed Polish auto mechanic, made 27 phone calls to Una Chaplin, demanding $600,000, approximately $2.8 million today. He used the pseudonym Mr. Rochat and eventually threatened violence against Una and her youngest children, and Una's response was a flat refusal to pay. Her explanation was that Charlei would have thought it rather ridiculous, and she added that her husband was in heaven and in my heart. Police monitored 200 phone booths across the Lausanne area, and on May 16, 1978, they arrested Wardas in a phone booth while making another ransom call. His accomplice, 38-year-old Bulgarian mechanic Gansho Ganev, was arrested shortly after, and the men couldn't remember exactly where they'd buried the coffin because crops had grown over the site. Police used metal detectors to locate it by the coffin's metal handles, and the body had been missing for 76 days when they found it in the cornfield approximately 12 miles from the original grave. At trial, Wardas explained that he did not feel particularly squeamish about interfering with a coffin and was going to hide it deeper in the same hole originally, but it was raining and the earth got too heavy. He received 4.5 years of hard labor, while Ganev received an 18-month suspended sentence. The dark irony was not lost on observers, because the bungled scheme, two hapless, down-on-their-luck men, attempting an audacious crime that went wrong in almost every way, resembled a plot from a Chaplin film. Una wrote to the thieves after their conviction that she had nothing especially against them, and all was forgiven. Chaplin was reburied in the original plot, this time encased in 6 feet of reinforced concrete. A 5-year-old workhouse orphan finished his mother's performance as her voice cracked on stage and became the highest-paid entertainer in the world at age 26, earning 9 times the president's salary. He co-founded United Artists, in what one studio head called the inmates taking over the asylum, married 2 16-year-old girls when he was 29 and 35, and faced a 52-page divorce complaint sold under the counter like pornography. Blood tests proved his innocence in a paternity case, and the jury said, "Pay anyway for 21 years, while an FBI file of 1,900 pages started in 1922 and found no evidence. His re-entry permit was revoked while crossing the Atlantic, which led to exile from America for 20 years in Switzerland until he returned to a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in Oscar history. He was knighted at age 85 in a wheelchair, and his 4th marriage, with its 36-year age gap, lasted 34 years and produced 8 children together. His body was stolen from the grave and held for ransom in a cornfield. The widow refused to pay because Charlei would have thought it rather ridiculous, and they found it with a metal detector 76 days later before reburying him in concrete. Charlei Chaplin's story proves something nobody wants to admit, that you can rise from a workhouse to become the highest-paid entertainer in the world, create cinema's most beloved character, and still be exiled by the country that made you rich. The little tramp made millions laugh, while the man behind the mustache married children, lost to juries that ignored science, and died in exile only to have his body stolen from the grave. His widow forgave the thieves because Charlei would have thought it rather ridiculous. The final joke on the greatest comedian who ever lived. If Charlei Chaplin's journey from workhouse orphan to cinema legend, to exiled icon to stolen corpse moved you, you're going to want to see next week's video. We're covering another Hollywood legend who lived an impossible life your generation remembers but never knew the truth behind. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you've got your own memories of watching Chaplin films on TV, or thoughts on his controversial life, share them in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.